Most people think a wealth transfer is something you read about after it's already over, like a headline explaining why a small group got rich while everyone else stayed exactly where they were. The uncomfortable truth is that the next major wealth shift isn't waiting for the future. It's already in motion, quietly, unevenly, and without a countdown timer. And the reason 90% of people will miss it has very little to do with intelligence, access, or luck. It has everything to do with how humans react to slow, structural change. When people imagine a massive transfer of wealth, they picture a dramatic moment, a crash, a boom, a single event where money suddenly moves from one group to another. But in reality, wealth rarely moves in explosions. It moves in drips that compound. It moves through incentives that reward certain behaviors while quietly punishing others. It moves through patience while distracting those who are focused on noise. This topic matters now because the conditions that enable wealth transfers are already locked in. Demographics are shifting. Technology is changing how value is created. Debt, productivity, and incentives are pulling in different directions. None of this feels urgent on a random Tuesday afternoon, which is exactly why most people won't act on it. They'll watch it unfold like a documentary instead of participating in it like a strategy. The biggest misunderstanding is believing that seeing a trend is the same as benefiting from it. Awareness feels productive, but awareness without action is just entertainment. Millions of people will correctly identify what's happening over the next few years. They'll talk about it. They'll share clips. They'll nod along. And they'll still make the same financial decisions that keep them on the sidelines. Wealth transfers don't reward people who are early to information. They reward people who are early to behavior change. That's a much harder shift to make, because it requires giving up comfort, convenience, and social validation long before the payoff is obvious. One of the main reasons people miss these moments is timing mismatch. Human brains are wired for short feedback loops. We're comfortable working hard when results show up quickly. But most wealth-building opportunities operate on delayed feedback. You put in effort now and the reward shows up years later, often after boredom, doubt, and frustration have already convinced you to quit. The people who benefit from large wealth shifts usually look wrong for a long time. They appear cautious when others are confident. They look patient when others are busy. They seem inactive when others are chasing momentum. Most people don't want to look wrong in public for years just to be right later in private. Another factor is incentives. Modern systems are very good at rewarding short-term participation. Spending is encouraged, consumption is normalized, comfort is marketed as success. Very few systems reward restraint, long-term planning, or delayed gratification. When incentives push one way and discipline requires another, most people follow the incentives. That's not a character flaw. It's human nature. If everyone around you is optimizing for convenience and lifestyle, choosing long-term positioning feels unnecessary, even extreme. The pressure to blend in quietly overrides the logic to prepare differently. There's also a misunderstanding about who wealth transfers are for. Many people assume they only benefit institutions, insiders, or people with massive starting capital. That belief becomes a convenient excuse to disengage. If the game feels unwinnable, you don't have to play. But historically, large shifts create asymmetry. They reward those who align early, even at small scale, while punishing those who stay misaligned, regardless of income. Small advantages compound faster during periods of change. A modest amount of capital placed correctly, combined with time and discipline, can outperform much larger sums that are poorly positioned. But that requires accepting that progress will feel slow at first. Another reason people miss these moments is overconfidence and stability. Most daily life feels normal. Bills get paid, systems keep working. Because change is gradual, it's easy to assume the future will resemble the present. But wealth transfers don't require collapse. They happen during transitions that feel boring while they're unfolding. People often wait for confirmation. They want certainty before acting. But certainty usually arrives after the opportunity has already repriced. By the time something feels obvious, the advantage has already shifted to those who moved earlier. There's also the issue of complexity avoidance. Long-term financial positioning requires learning new concepts, rethinking assumptions, and sometimes admitting past decisions weren't optimal. That's mentally uncomfortable. It's easier to stick with familiar habits, even if they're inefficient. Many people confuse activity with progress. They feel productive managing day-to-day finances, optimizing monthly expenses, or chasing short-term returns, while ignoring the larger structural forces shaping where value is flowing. Busy doesn't always mean prepared. Another subtle trap is narrative addiction. People love clean stories with heroes, villains, and clear outcomes. Real wealth shifts are messy. They don't fit neatly into slogans. They require holding conflicting ideas at once. That discomfort pushes people back toward simpler explanations and away from strategic thinking. Patience is one of the most underrated factors in wealth building. Not passive waiting, but active patience. The ability to stay positioned while nothing exciting seems to be happening. Most people underestimate how long compounding takes to become visible, and overestimate how quickly they'll stick with a plan that doesn't deliver immediate feedback. Behavior matters more than predictions. You don't need to perfectly forecast the future to benefit from long-term shifts. You need to align your actions with principles that historically survive change. Living below your means, investing consistently, avoiding unnecessary leverage, building skills that compound. These aren't exciting ideas, which is why they're ignored. Another reason people miss the transfer is emotional decision-making. Fear and excitement are powerful forces. They push people to buy when things feel safe and sell when things feel uncertain. Wealth transfers often reward the opposite behavior, which feels counterintuitive in the moment. Opportunity cost is rarely felt immediately. Choosing comfort today doesn't hurt today. It hurts years later, when options narrow and flexibility disappears. By then, the cost feels like bad luck instead of a predictable outcome. There's also the illusion of reversibility. People assume they can always start later, that there will be another chance, another cycle, another opportunity. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes the window closes quietly and doesn't reopen in the same way. A major wealth transfer doesn't require everyone to get poorer. It requires relative positioning to change. Some assets grow faster than others. Some skills become more valuable while others stagnate. Some behaviors are rewarded while others fall behind. Missing the transfer often looks like staying in place while the world moves around you. The people who benefit tend to share a few traits. They're curious but skeptical. They're optimistic but cautious. They focus on systems instead of headlines. They're willing to look boring in the short term to gain leverage in the long term. They also understand that wealth isn't just money, it's optionality. It's the ability to choose. Time, flexibility, and low stress are forms of wealth that compound alongside financial assets. People who optimize only for visible status often sacrifice these invisible advantages. Another overlooked element is identity. Many people see themselves as consumers rather than owners. That mindset shapes every decision. Ownership doesn't have to mean businesses or real estate. It means participating in value creation rather than only value consumption. Education alone isn't enough. Plenty of well-informed people make poor financial decisions. What matters is translating understanding into consistent behavior. That's harder than watching videos or reading articles, because it requires saying no to things that feel good now. Discipline doesn't mean deprivation, it means alignment. Spending intentionally, investing deliberately, choosing based on long-term outcomes rather than short-term emotion. These habits aren't dramatic, but they're powerful when compounded over time. The coming years will likely feel confusing rather than explosive. Some things will seem expensive. Others will seem stagnant. There will be moments of excitement followed by long stretches of boredom. That's exactly the environment where most people lose focus. Those who stay grounded tend to ignore daily noise and pay attention to slow-moving trends. They understand that wealth transfers don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves in hindsight. Missing the transfer won't feel like failure. It will feel like normal life continuing, just with fewer options over time. That's what makes it so easy to overlook. The encouraging part is that participation doesn't require perfection. It requires direction. Small, consistent steps taken early matter more than dramatic moves taken late. Adjusting behavior today has more impact than trying to compensate tomorrow. You don't need to predict exactly how 2026 will look. You need to position yourself so that multiple positive outcomes are possible. Flexibility is a form of insurance. At its core, this wealth transfer is about alignment. Aligning incentives with actions. Aligning time horizons with goals. Aligning daily decisions with long-term values. Most people won't do this because it's quiet, unglamorous, and unrewarded in the short term. But for those who do, the benefits often look obvious in hindsight and invisible in the moment. If there's one principle worth remembering, it's this: wealth flows toward patience, preparation, and discipline during periods of transition, not because the system is fair, but because compounding rewards consistency. The next few years won't be about finding a secret. They'll be about avoiding obvious mistakes, staying positioned, and letting time do its work. That's why 90% of people will see this wealth transfer happening and still miss it. Not because they didn't know, but because they didn't change. And if this perspective helped you think differently about long-term positioning and financial behavior, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more grounded discussions on money, incentives, and long-term decision-making.